Hey, this is Pat Ricard, aka Project Pat, and you're listening to the Baltimore Beatdown Podcast, the best Ravens podcast on the planet.
It's pretty incredible. In fact, it's la-marvelous.
Thank you, guys.
All right, what is up, you guys? Welcome back to another edition of the Baltimore Beatdown Podcast. It is Wednesday, March 4th, and the NFL Combine has officially wrapped up. We are now approaching Amansky levels with free agency coming up, so we like that a lot. Some fun news breaking today, a lot of stuff to cover. How you doing there, bud?
Doing good. It is Wednesday, my dudes. Home.
I forgot about that. I'm glad that you reminded me of it, though.
It is Wednesday. I'm having a good time. The combine is over. This is a really weird combine. Apparently everybody hated it because it was like guys running three cones at 10:15 p.m., which is kind of weird, but I thought the NFL Network did a really good job. My boy Daniel Jeremiah killed it. My boy Peter Schrager was very awkward on this one, I will say. Seemed a bit out of place. I don't know. I feel like his expertise is more in like the minutia of the day-to-day, like during the season stuff. But always fun to see Peter as well, and it was fun.
Yeah, I liked it. I was not a fan of the primetime slotting.
Agreed.
I don't know. There's just something about the combine that it feels like an event that is more.
It's like March Madness. It's like it needs to be during the day the first time.
Yeah. It feels like it's something that should be more for function. And like I get that the NFL wants to make money, but not everything has to be this like blowout primetime event. And there's almost like a sleepiness to it that I think translates well more to daytime viewing. You know, there's nobody like in the stands in Indianapolis watching them. It's just kind of in this big empty stadium and it's quiet and like the guys are a little tense out there. And I just felt like that kind of translates better to the
energy is daytime energy.
Yeah, for sure. Which is like, it was very weird watching some of the like 40s and stuff. And it's like, yeah, you can tell they're trying to blow it into a primetime slot, but I think it's maybe they're a little bit ahead of schedule with the primetime thing because there's a lot of rumblings about it potentially moving to Los Angeles to try and show off that new stadium that the Rams are building, and the Chargers are attempting to potentially do a hostile entry into and force themselves in there as tenants. But that's a whole nother story. But yeah, that's going to be, I think, kind of a mess and a hot mess in a way, in the way that some other NFL events are, like the draft. But for now, I just think a primetime slot in Indianapolis for an event like that is just kind of doesn't really translate very well.
It was also primetime on the weekend.
Yeah, true. It's like what are we doing there?
Not actually primetime. Like if it was like Sunday night through Wednesday night, it would have been a lot better.
Yeah, for sure. I just wasn't as into it. I think partially because of that reason, but I tried to pay attention as much as I possibly could, following along with a lot of the scores you guys were posting. There was some, a ton of chatter leading into the 40 about Henry Ruggs, and then I think Jalen Reagor was maybe chirping a little bit and did not live up to, as we've discussed a little bit already. But yeah, we wanted to jump into a little bit of a mailbag in order to help us recap the event. Starting off, I put one out on Twitter. You put one out on Instagram via the main account. I put one out via our podcast account. But we got few replies here on Twitter that we wanted to get to first. First one coming from our buddy Matt Pine, who is a good friend of the show, saying, what under the radar guy impressed the most at the combine in your estimation?
Under the radar guy that impressed the most, Willie Gay. I'd say Willie Gay. He didn't have a ton of starts in his career, had a couple weird suspensions, then got in a fight with his starting quarterback, apparently broke his jaw before they played in a bowl game. Some weird stuff there, but he went out. He out jumped Isaiah Simmons, was the second fastest linebacker. Ran a 4.46 at over 240 pounds. Looked crazy smooth in coverage. And obviously we love to use the Draft Network's mock draft generator. I think that's kind of the consensus one, and a lot more people have started doing their own little mock drafts because of it over the last year or two. And he was like number 360. 367, I think, or 366 on their list when you're like doing a mock draft. And then now he goes in the first like 60, 50 picks, like immediately afterwards. They already changed the real algorithm. So I think a lot of people are going to start getting hip to him. I think he was like PFF's 70th ranked player. And apparently he's going to be even higher now. And him and Terrell Lewis are both guys like weren't on the field very often, but are just freak athletes. We didn't get to see Terrell Lewis much, but I'm going to go with Willie Gay.
Yeah, I like that one. I don't know how under the radar he is, but I'd go Chase Claypool. I think he's a guy who, on paper, should have gone out and did what he did, which is just jump out of the gym and completely, appear physically dominant. He's in that Notre Dame offense with Ian Book, who is more of a running quarterback. So it's kind of similar to the Miles Boykin thing, who was playing with Brandon Wimbush and some other guys, and I guess Book as well. But just a physical freak who I think could translate well to the NFL, and I think his testing did him a lot of favors, and he potentially made himself a lot of money as a potential tight end wide receiver hybrid. We don't really know what he's going to be, but he would be the guy that I would circle for that category.
Yeah, it looks like maybe like a Darren Waller type.
Sure. Moving on, our other buddy Corey Potts, who hits us up a lot, says, what position group were you most satisfied with, and which position group do you feel disappointed? And then you jumped in there saying at the combine or in general, and he said whichever you want to do, shoddy.
At the combine, I think I was disappointed with the interior defensive linemen, and I think I was pleasantly surprised or pleased with the linebackers for the most part.
Okay. Who were some of the linebackers that stood out to you?
Malik Harrison is enormous. He's like a old school style Mike that, like, the word is linebacker. He backs the line. He engages with offensive linemen. He takes on blocks, stacks them, and then makes a tackle. So he's not, just holding ground. He will go make a play through a guard or through a tackle. And then when you go back and watch his tape, he kind of like actually had coverage responsibilities as an inside linebacker. Like he would go cover a tight end in man coverage, or would go kind of like a match zone where a crosser would come and he would just peel out with the crosser and cover it decently. Definitely a lot of poor plays in coverage, but had more responsibility than most other guys, and he has some room to grow there. But he ended up running, I think, a 6.83 3-cone, posted really good agility scores, runs a 4.65, has good jumps. They get like a 35-inch vertical, and he's a big dude. So it answers a couple questions there. Talked about, Willie Gay. There's a guy, Logan Wilson, out of Wyoming, who is a very fluid, kind of easy mover. Reminds you of Leighton Vander Esch up there at Boise State a little bit. And he ran a 4.63, I believe, and then posted some good agility and some good explosive scores. So the linebacker class is just like deeper than I initially thought that it was. Jordan Brooks definitely went in there and ran, I think, a sub 4.5 or something. I can't remember it exactly, but ran like a sub 4.5, or I think someone timed it at a 4.44 and there's some dispute or something. But he went out and posted just as good numbers as Kenneth Murray and, Patrick Queen pretty much. And then you go on film, him and Kenneth Murray did a lot of the same things. So that definitely helped his stock a lot. Ran really, really well, looked pretty smooth in some of his drills and stuff. Then defensive linemen were just like, meh. I don't know. They all looked like meh. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it other than meh. There was a couple fast guys. None of them were like killing the agility drills or anything. They actually post like historically bad agility drills. Derek Brown, AJ Epinesa both kind of had a shit combine. Neville Gallimore was like pretty good, but his agility scores weren't no one had good agility scores for anyone on these defensive lines. So it was a little disappointing there. But then again, you go look at the combine as a whole, and people have started kind of doing meta stuff with the average 3-cone of everyone at this combine was the worst that they went back 20 years. So maybe that's because of the format, what have you. But they just didn't look physically imposing. I don't know. And then the edge class kind of lump in there, and just a lot of them sat out. So it was disappointing. Chason sat out. Terrell Lewis sat out. Gross Matos sat out for most of the stuff. So we didn't get to see a lot of those guys. But yeah.
Yeah, I think just in general, I'm maybe a little disappointed in the idea that some of these guys are maybe pricing themselves stock-wise out of the combine before they even get there. A lot of the quarterbacks near the top of the heap are not throwing. A lot of the fast wideouts presumably are not running. And a lot of, like you mentioned, the D linemen maybe weren't participating in some of the stuff that they were going to do. So I think just in general, that for me is a disappointment. And then I had kind of similar answers to you where the D line, there were some hyped guys that didn't live up. And then linebacker, I actually kind of like this linebacker class athleticism wise. So I think it lined up pretty well. There are some discrepancies. Like Patrick Queen, I think he tested pretty well. I don't see that speed on tape really at all. So I think it's interesting sort of sifting through those types of guys. But yeah, for me, Kenneth Murray is a guy who's really fucking fast on tape, and he looked like it out there on the field of the combine. So
yeah, those are definitely the headline guys. But yeah, a deep linebacker class, a lot deeper than I thought. You had to do some digging, but they've started to surface now, and a lot of good mid-round options for the Ravens there. Also, Akeem Davis-Gaither, a guy I've mentioned on here, he didn't run either. He ended up having to have foot surgery, apparently. A lot of injuries at this
Yeah,
combine.
for sure. I was going to say that too. So many injuries. Yeah,
there was a couple guys that ended up going through physicals. Let me see, Chenault hurt, Murray and Queen hurt each other back, or hurt themselves, not each other, hurt themselves back to back, and it was just like guys dropping left and right. So okay, maybe some of the guys who sat out were right, but at the same time,
was it the two LSU guys that discovered they had the same injury? They just discovered it there when they got their medical. I think it was Justin Jefferson and a DB maybe.
I don't even remember. I don't even know about that part.
Yeah,
maybe did Delpit not run? I guess.
Yeah, maybe. I saw somewhere that two guys had some sort of foot injury that's going to have them miss some time over the course of the offseason that they discovered in their medical, which is funny. It made me think of the fact that when we were talking to Connor Rogers from Bleacher Report, and he was saying that the medicals are the most important thing that really just don't get that much coverage unless something bad happens, which makes sense. I mean, you're not going to be zooming in a camera and trotting Rich Eisen out to cover medicals, but it's just low-key the most important part of the whole event. Moving on, our boy ZJ Batman, Zach Cantor, says players worth trading up for heavily, like using a first round from next year to get up.
It makes sense. If there was ever a year for them to trade up, it feels like it's now. Van Jefferson, that's who it was, just came to me. Van Jefferson didn't run. He has a Jones fracture in his foot.
That's what it
is. Didn't know until medicals. There was someone else too, Akeem Davis-Gaither, and then I think it was Thaddeus Moss. Moss's son.
The two LSU guys.
Yeah, it was okay. So a couple of them there, and then there was some injuries. But if there was ever a year to trade up, this is the year, because when you're 14-2. There's more holes than a 14-2 team might usually have. I don't know, but I feel like DeCosta is gonna do some sort of whirlwind during free agency. Make sure that they can go draft talent instead of.
It was a 14-2 that was talent over scheme is kind of something that I believe in, but it felt like scheme played a part in them meshing well as a team to get to 14-2 and just kind of riding a wave as opposed to being just some juggernaut that was supposed to go and do that.
The offensive line is a perfect example of that. When Joe Flacco was the quarterback, different scheme, and that was an average, I guess, maybe an above average offensive line, average above average, and then now it's one of the best groups of the last 5 years as an offensive line. So I absolutely agree, scheme over talent, but it depends. I think that DeCosta just loves the draft so much. I don't think he wants to take a second mortgage out and trade up to go get Isaiah Simmons at 7 or something, but they've got 4 fourth-round picks. Tell me that there's not some team that has 5 total picks in it. The Seahawks went into the last draft with 4 picks and ended up with 10.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of teams that would like to do that. They're kind of in that 8-8 range, and I don't know. So tell me you don't want to go package 3 of your 4 fourth-round picks and your third-round pick and go get 2 second-round picks or something, or I don't know, maybe move up from 28 to 22 or something minor like that. So I think it's definitely a good year. If you're within reach of a guy, go fucking get them. This is a great year for it. More than I can't remember a year in any history where the Ravens didn't have a lot of holes. Plus, they just don't have a lot of roster spots, it feels like. So yes, definitely trade up.
As far as players you do it for, first round pick next year wise, CeeDee Lamb comes to mind for me. Derek Brown, maybe one of the offensive. Maybe Wirfs, because he could play guard. You already have 2 good tackles. And
if Wirfs starts to slip, I was talking about him today. I like Wirfs a lot to play guard and then be like a backup tackle option for Stanley and Brown. That would be awesome.
Right, exactly. So those are just some of the names that I would probably consider just based upon need. I don't love the idea of trading him for Judy. I think he's maybe a little redundant with Hollywood, but I think somebody like Lamb.
Judy could fall. I really think Judy could fall like to the Ravens in this draft.
Interesting. You want to expand on that?
I just think he had a little bit of drop. Like the way I'm going to sell this is going to make it sound like he sucks, but I think he's very good. He had a little bit of drops. He ran okay, like good. He didn't like have a wow combine, and then I just this draft can go two ways. It can be like, all right, boom, CeeDee's gone, boom, Ruggs is gone, boom, Judy's gone, boom, Justin Jefferson's gone. Like 5 guys could very easily go in the top 20, but I just think that like when you just think of supply and demand, there's a shitload of really good receivers. You're going to want like a defensive end, like someone's going to want like Yetur Gross-Matos at 16 instead of Ruggs or something. Like, when you just look at the draft as a whole, receivers could very easily fall. I think that Ruggs is really easy to love. I think that Lamb is really easy to love. And I think that like some people might want a slot receiver, kind of like a true slot, like Justin Jefferson over Judy. And not that Judy won't play slot, but I could very easily, not very easily, but like realistically see him falling to 25, 28. Like, I don't know. It would not shock me at all. So I just think that Judy could be like a sneaky faller in this draft for the Ravens.
Yeah, I could potentially see that. I just feel like he's the guy who's been there for so long at number 1 that now we're doing the thing that we do with prospects where you start to kind of pick them apart. I feel like it's happened with wide receivers in the past, and it's maybe what's happening with him right now. I think the Odell Beckham comparisons are, somewhat real. So I think he's still a beast, but I don't necessarily, skill set wise, I think Lamb is probably just as good, but in a different way. Shout out to Michael Scott calling Ryan just as hot as Jan, but in a different way. So yeah, it's kind of like that. It's like the Michael Scott thing. Like CeeDee Lamb is just as hot as Jerry Jeudy, but in a different way.
I think Lamb is wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I do too, honestly. I'd go him 1, and then Ruggs and Jeudy are kind of like 1A, 1B. It's a wash for me. Right.
And when you just see CeeDee Lamb running routes against air, you're like, whoa, is that the same species as me? Like he's like some super speed alien with like his little head fakes and like hezzy cuts and stuff. You're like, it like makes me uncomfortable thinking about having
Judy. Yeah, like if Judy is Beckham, then I mean, and this isn't like a hot take. I'm sure people have said it before, but Lamb is DeAndre Hopkins.
Right, and he is like possibly like more. Actually, like probably better after the catch. Like,
well, yeah. I mean, Hopkins was the 26th pick.
Yeah,
and that was an awful draft too.
Hopkins is really good after the catch. He's also always has super tight coverage on him, like 2 guys at least looking at him. So like maybe he just doesn't get that many opportunities, but like he's very good after the catch. The Lamb is just like, what is happening when the ball is in his hands? Like he's 195 pounds, makes three guys miss.
I don't know why I get this comparison with him, but have you seen T2?
T2?
Terminator 2?
Yeah, I don't know if I remember anything from it, but go on.
Okay, so there's a character in it that's just the most badass fucking villain I've ever seen in a movie.
Oh,
Robert Patrick's character that like can turn into liquid and just run through anything, and like you can't kill him. Like that to me is what CeeDee Lamb is.
I absolutely agree. He can mold into anything, and like I don't know, he'll do whatever it takes to get through you.
Versatile basically. And just an absolute killer. Like
Yes, he's a bad mamma jamma.
Exactly. Moving on, Brandon Kleckner, B Roney 20, hot dog, sandwich or nah. Welcome to Mike and Mike, and we're back here after our Progressive Insurance Fresh Take Hotline. Ad read there, and we are here to discuss: is a hot dog a sandwich? It's a big Mike and Mike topic.
I don't think I can answer it. I don't think I can like.
That's a big Mike and Mike thing.
They love doing that stuff. That's like how they feel relatable or something. But
gotta relate to the audience.
I just want if it has bread, it's a sandwich. Like if it's between some bread, it's a sandwich, I guess.
Yeah, I would probably, for me, I would probably default to no, because like I just have a very specific connotation of what a sandwich is, or at
It's a
least,
sub. Like it's a sub.
or a couple of yeah, okay, I can see that. It's a sub.
It's a sub. That's final answer. Sub.
Especially like with the way they make them in Chicago, where they do all the toppings and stuff.
There we go. Chicago dog is definitely a sub.
And he goes on to ask, I'm here. Okay, well, so I responded to that, asking the big questions, and he says, I'm here to ask the questions the others are too afraid of, which is fair. I mean, he could barely even get a straight answer out of us on that. But he also went ahead to say, if there is a stud guard available in the first or second, jump on that all day, yes or no. I guess yes or no. He didn't really phrase it as a question. He just kind of made that as a statement. If there is a stud guard there in the first or second, I jump on it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he said something about Yonder retiring.
Yeah,
too.
he says Yonde coming back, and that's the best way to invest in Lamar.
Yes, I fully agree. The guys who fit the bill for me, we already said Wirfs. He's probably going to be gone. But again, tackle class, arguably just as deep as the receiver class. There's like 8 guys that could potentially start next year. Like on whatever, maybe that's like a little hyperbole from draft season, but I haven't watched a lot of the tackles like as my primary focus, just because why would I with Ronnie Stanley, Orlando Brown? That's my little purple lenses, but like Wirfs, absolutely. Cesar Ruiz could play guard or center. He's just like super dependable. Kind of reminds you of like Matt Burke almost, like super smart, like not athletic, but like balanced and smooth and stuff. And then who's the other one? Jonah Jackson would be a guard, and at Ohio State, I think he put up 32 reps at 225, and he wasn't supposed to be a strong guy like that. And you go watch his film. I just got my paws on some Ohio State film, and he leaves a littered slew of dead bodies on the ground in the run game. I did not know he was like laying guys out like he is. Very, 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 very well-rounded game. Solid, and people are kind of saying you kind of have to put him in a zone scheme. I think he would be great in a cat power, or like a Ravens do all of it, do zone, do gap. So I think he would be another good fit. But yes, I think even if it's not those guys, maybe they're like Hennessy out of Temple or something. I think it's Robert Hunt out of Louisiana. I haven't studied those guys a ton, but I think if Yonder retires, it is a high priority to protect Lamar and make sure that he's able to continue progressing the right way and keep improving as a passer. And with like obviously Yonda leaving is going to be a step back, no matter who replaces him, no matter how much Yonda is kind of not quite as good as he was maybe 5-7 years ago, but definitely awesome advantage for Lamar is having Yonda right in front of him over the first couple years of his career.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on, Steamboat Phil, pros and cons for picking a wide receiver round 1 versus defense and vice versa.
I don't know. It's tough. Like those are needs. Receiver is like a need-ish.
Receiver is always a need here until it's not, which it never is not. It always is.
Yes, I agree with that. And
it depends on what you mean by defense. I mean, DeCosta kind of showed last year that he didn't really prioritize the front 7 very much, but now your secondary is pretty much locked down. You're bringing presumably a lot of guys back. I guess we'll see what happens with Brandon Carr and Jimmy Smith. But yeah, you're going to be bringing a lot of your young studs on defense and, some of the veterans that you have back. And it looks like it's going to be okay back there. I think maybe he's talking like pass rusher or D lineman versus wide receiver. And I guess the pros and cons, I mean, it just depends on what you want this team to be and how you want to continue building it. They've already heavily invested in Lamar the last couple of years. So do you want to keep heavily investing in him directly in that way, or do you want to start putting, some more teeth up in the front of that defense there and, find better ways to get the ball back into his hands? I mean, it just kind of depends on how you want to build the roster. So I think
there's that big rumor that kind of floated around, I think from Zrebeck and Matt Miller as well, that DeCosta wants like a A1 pass rush to help protect leads because he knows teams are going to have to throw a lot on the Ravens when they establish leads with how their offense was. But like receiver and edge are very similar for me as far as like fans love them. They're flashy. They get sacks and touchdowns and all that crap. And like they kind of feel like equal in my book.
Yeah, I agree. I think I guess depending on the player, like if you want to pick either one of those positions, I'm going to be fine with it.
Right. And in round one, there's like 4 guys that I'm pretty confident in, maybe 5 at receiver, but maybe only, 2 or 3 that could reasonably be around at edge. And again, teams might end up, the Ravens being a team, contrary to popular belief, no, I'm just kidding, might end up being like, hey, we can go get Van Jefferson in the 3rd round. We can go get, Hamler in the 2nd round, whatever. But they don't like the edge class very much. They don't see guys in the round. So that's where the minutia there. But I mean, hopefully they just take the best player.
For sure. And last Twitter one coming from Will Pino. Who do you think would be the most realistic player to fall to us that would be a steal?
Most realistic player to fall. I think I like the idea of Grant Delpit, even though we just kind of said they don't need a DB. When I watch him play, I mean, he misses some tackles, whatever. He's kind of slender. Really reminds me of Eric Berry coming out of Tennessee. Crazy range, instincts, stuff like that. Safety is like not getting a lot of hype in this draft, and because of those tackling things. Someone like him, and then I guess AJ Epinesa now, because he had like a complete shite combine, could possibly fall. A lot of mock drafts have some have him in like the middle of the 2nd round now because of his combine. So those 2 guys for me would be a steal.
Yeah, for sure. And with that, we come to the end of the Twitter questions. What do you say we go to a quick break and then we'll throw it over to the Instagram side?
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right, so that brings an end to the Twitter segment. Why don't you go ahead and pull open the Instagram comments that we received?
Alrighty, first off is from Petrus Priv, our boy out there in Europa. Everyone has AJ Epinesa falling, but his combine wasn't that bad in my opinion. Maybe snag him at 28. If he's there at 28, I'm running up and getting to that podium real quick. And Epinesa seems like he ended up weighing in at 275, and he looked a little thin. And I think it kind of was, his plan was like, all right, I'm going to thin down, maybe see if I can keep some stock as an edge. But it backfired because then maybe he wasn't as explosive and strong as he could have been. And then also was pretty slow. And a couple people posted a video of him like not getting to his 2nd step of his 40 until he was like 0.41 seconds in already. So he had like a really bad start, which is, I mean, this is what I don't understand about that. He gets down in his stance like as if he's some sort of sprinter, but he's 6'5", 275. Like, get in your fucking 3-point stance. That's how you want to come out, and then you're going to have your best 10-yard split, which is what really matters. He had a horrible 10-yard split. It was like 1.81. But then you go look at Calais Campbell, who's someone I've compared him to, and I think a couple other people have. Calais Campbell is a couple inches taller at just under 6'8". AJ Epinesa was 6'5". Campbell is 15 pounds heavier, so he's a little bit taller, a little bit heavier, but same kind of body type. Calais Campbell had 35 3/4 inch arms. AJ Epinesa ended up having, I think it was 35 1/4 inch arms, so a little bit less length. Then the 40s are similar, both in between the 5 and 5.1. They both have really long arms. They didn't bench press a ton. AJ Epinesa jumped a little bit better and was a little tiny bit slower through the 10-yard split. But, both had bad agility scores. But then you go watch the way that they play, and they're just gigantic power players that bully guards because they're too quick for them and bully tackles because they're a little bit too strong for them. They have crazy good length. So I think that if he falls, that would be awesome. I think a lot of people are very high on him. I don't know. He's like, the scary part to me is that he maybe ends up being like Zach Allen out of Boston College, who the Cardinals drafted, and I believe the 2nd, maybe the 3rd round last year. And he's just a little too sluggish to ever be like an impact player, but he's going to be able to come in and start immediately. And just how frequently he would like win off the snap and like not just bull rush and like push the pocket, but get around with a 2-hand swipe or like a club and actually beat his man was very frequent on film. He's playing in the Big Ten. He crushed Wisconsin, who has like 7 offensive linemen in the NFL right now, and I think 3 on their current line that are going to end up in the NFL. So I definitely would love AJ Epinesa at 28. I think I've been on that train for a while. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of already happening. I don't know whose mock draft it was. Sorry for butchering this, but I saw somebody
it might have even been DJ having him fall to the Ravens there at 28. So yeah, it feels like a realistic possibility at this point. It didn't feel like his testing was all that bad. So to drop, out of the, teens into the 20s does feel a little weird. But it's also potentially a reminder that these guys are connected. Maybe they hear about some of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, maybe with medical, maybe with interview. You don't know what it is that could, cause teams to cool on them a little bit. So maybe it was just the whole experience as opposed to his testing, which wasn't that bad, as you said, that's causing him to fall. But yeah, I'm kind of with you where based upon what I know, if he were there at 28, I'd probably run to the podium as well.
Yeah, he's really a dream pick there. Moving on, B Rose 931 asked a double header there. He said, thoughts on getting Jason Pierre-Paul in free agency, the firework dynamite man himself. Jason Pierre-Paul, interesting fit. He's had some back problems from that car accident, so maybe that's not a great idea. But the dude's been freaking beaten and battered by life while being in the NFL.
Yeah, the guy's like Job, for Christ's sake. Like, I can't help but feel bad for him, but that's actually kind of an intriguing fit that I hadn't thought of. But yeah,
player comparisons, JPP, Job.
Yeah, well, I'm just here to bring all the I guess you could call that biblical comparisons when I get a chance. But yeah, look up Job. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of an intriguing fit to me. He's still like sneaky young, right? Let me look him up. He was a rookie on that. 31. He was a rookie in 2007, I think, but I think he was a young rookie. Let me look him up real quick.
I think he's like 31 or 2.
Yeah, which like it feels like he's been in the league forever.
Him and Robert Quinn both are in that category.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing. He literally just turned 31. So he'll be 31 this season.
Yeah, that feels like a classic Raven signing.
For sure. I mean, he was okay last year, right?
Yeah, he was injured for a little, and I think he came in and was like fine, athletic and stuff.
8.5
Maybe
sacks.
He ends up getting hurt. Maybe he ends up getting hurt again, whatever. But if it's on like a nice, not that expensive 2-year deal, hell to the yeah. I've always loved JPP. He's always been dynamic.
He's gone 8.5 in 2017, 12.5 in 2018, and 8.5 in 2019. He has not slowed down, and he's 31. And it feels like he's been in the league since I was.
And that's 11. The defensive ends stay good for a long time, like well into their 30s.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I could definitely see that happening. I wouldn't mind it at all. Just make sure you get him like a cool. How T-Sizzle always would do like the Darth Vader mask. You get him like a cool like Darth Vader claw or something. I think that would be a good fit.
Or like a giant pair of scissors, like Edward Scissorhands or something. Yeah, so we both like that. Bureau's asked again, of the linebackers that you've studied, who would be the most natural fit as a Mike linebacker in Baltimore? I think it's between Malik Harrison and Patrick Queen for me. Queen, see, when you say most natural fit as a Mike, like you want a bigger dude who's going to be able to thump a little more, and that probably feels like Malik Harrison to me, who had a really good combine, especially at his size. And he is like Mike is Mike is as close to a defensive lineman as a linebacker can be, is kind of how you want your Mike to be a little bit more.
He's like the Rock. He's out there,
Yes, he's literally Dwayne Johnson, like that kind of body type. I think he would be probably the most natural fit at actually Mike, whereas like Queen might end up playing more Will and Murray might end up playing more Sam. And
Murray is like smaller and faster, so he's probably not going to be like a Mike linebacker, I feel like.
He's 6'3", 240. He's big, but I think
small is the wrong way to put it. He just looks like so flighty and like fleet on the field, I think, but maybe that's just like how fast he is. I don't know, but
he kind of like when he takes on blockers, that's the way that he is. Yeah, I think
strikes me more as like we were talking about this. He reminds me of like an anti CJ Mosley, where he strikes me as more of like a pass defending like linebacker a little bit. And like not necessarily pass defending in the sense where you're like going to drop back, but like he's diagnosing like screens.
This is what scares me about him and Queen. At LSU and Oklahoma, middle linebackers don't play man. They don't even really drop into their like zone that often. They just kind of spy the quarterback, and then if a running back leaks out on like a flat route or an option route, they'll go cover that. And they like are always ready for screens, but they have no clue if someone runs across or behind them. Don't care, wasn't their job. And that's why I like Malik Harrison, because he would go play man against tight ends and go like have more coverage responsibilities. Whereas like Murray is actually a fucking amazing blitzer, and they would line him up as like a stand-up edge a lot, and he would kind of win around the outside. So I think like being like
round the outside,
I see him as like
the outside, round the outside.
I see him as like an Anthony Barr kind of.
Yeah, I could say like he's just like super fast and athletic and like makes a lot of fun big plays.
He's a chaser. He's like a lion. Like he hunts down the ball carrier, but he's not, like a Mike that's getting in and blowing up a center.
Maybe look at Kiko Alonso like 5 years ago, just making a shit ton of tackles and like, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, he's definitely a tackling machine. But yeah, I like Malik there. And then I think you like you don't like Queen so much, so you probably
I like Murray. I do like Murray, but I think you've got to have a certain mindset in picking him, and like you're gonna like the reason I would maybe like it as a pick is I feel like Wink would know what to do with a guy like that. He's just a tremendous athlete who you can plug in there to make plays at all levels of the field for you.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of guys there. You get Jordan Brooks, Willie Gay, Logan Wilson, all those guys we kind of mentioned earlier at linebacker. So there's some fits there, but I really like Malik Harrison at Ohio State. I think he is going to be a classic like second round linebacker. Like, why didn't we just draft this guy in the first round? He checks every box. Probably not going to be, a plus third down coverage inside linebacker. But with what the Ravens do, kind of leaning on Chuck Clark and the dime and the nickel and some of those things. I mean, he was a dynamic blitzer and then cover tight ends a bit, so I think he's the perfect fit there.
Yeah, for sure.
Now we are moving on. Githin Zmazer asks, accepting 14-2 unlikely to happen again. Odds on getting better or worse next year. How do you feel about the Ravens moving past 14-2?
I think the odds are definitely against it. I mean, it's just something that doesn't happen for any team very often. I mean, you look at New England, they're rarely even winning 14 games. So I don't necessarily see it happening at all. I think we've even maybe talked about this on the pod. I see them ideally sliding back to maybe that 11-win range, something like that. It's just the normal way it goes, even for the most successful teams, to kind of get past that double-digit win column and then sort of, playing the game where you try to pick off a couple of games and play for seeding. I think 14-2 is something that just, it's not even like once in a decade. It might even be more rare than that, just based on the numbers game. So I don't think they're going to be necessarily improving from it, but I don't think ultimately that record is a total indicator of like team quality all the time. So I think they have a chance to be a similar quality team while also dropping a couple of wins down from last year.
Yeah, it feels like maybe the pressure will be off of them a little bit and they can kind of like, I don't know, they're a little more confident, which helps you like not feel as frantic or flustered in some of the smaller games, I guess. I don't know how to put it. So like an 11-5 or 10-6, 12-4 feels likely, but Lamar Jackson just hasn't lost a lot of games, and if he keeps having a chip on his shoulder, you don't know. 14-2 is very unlikely. 13-3 is probably unlikely. 12-4 I could see. So in that 10-6 to 12-4 range feels realistic, and we'll see. Let's say Marshall Yonder retires, and somehow they don't end up back with Matt Judon and didn't really replace him effectively. Not many rookies are going to come in and be able to make the impact that those two guys made. So we'll see. They now have to play a division winner schedule again. They play KC. Play some tough games, play the NFC East, which is always a crapshoot. But yeah, I feel like 12-4 should be realistic. Them maybe losing a game or two, losing 2 games in a row, getting on another hot streak, and feels like Lamar really goes on hot streaks, and he obviously is so pivotal to this team's the way the season will pan out. So we shall see. But moving on, Walter Avia asks, Justin Jefferson or Laviska Shenault, if both available at 28. For me, it's Justin Jefferson, no contest.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I like Shenault as a player, but the medical stuff is really starting to concern me. He had issues with it in college. It's now flaring up again at the combine. I feel like Jefferson is a more traditional receiver who you can probably plug in right away and have a little bit more success from day one, whereas I see Shenault more as a project, which with the Ravens, they haven't shown a history of developing wide receivers, so I think you would want a guy who could step in right away and be a good player. And you're also trying to contend for a Super Bowl with Lamar on his rookie contract. So whatever you can do to bring in ready-made players, I think you're probably going to want to look long and hard at that as the option. So I'd probably go Jefferson as well.
Yeah, I think Jefferson checks every box. Shenault feels like a project who has I don't know. Yeah, a lot of wear and tear on his body. Everyone's like, oh, yeah, he was used at running back. Like, oh, great. He's been getting obliterated over and over again by linebackers. But yeah, moving on, Adam Jones 357 asks a similar question or makes a statement that I guess we like. Ravens will trade up for CD. That would be sweet. I think we both agree there. Also, Jefferson is better than Ruggs as a fit for the Ravens. I don't know that I agree there. I think both players are a good fit, but I just think having Ruggs and Hollywood on the same field is not fun at all. Whereas Justin Jefferson's like will be a consistent player. He's very smooth, more of a possession guy in many ways, and I think they kind of have that in the tight ends. And don't forget Miles Boykin and Willie Snead already. But adding Ruggs, I think, would just make it. How do you go cover Hurst, Andrews, Ruggs, and Hollywood on the field at the same time? Like, that's not a fun matchup at all. They could run out of that set still. Like, that is a ultimate personnel killer for me. But yeah, I know you like CD and I like CD, so we shall see D.
For sure.
Jacobs 99, bigger threat to the season. Lockout due to CBA disagreement or coronavirus?
Wow. Look at our boy Eric getting a little deep there. What a class act he is, by the way. Yeah. I would say lockout personally. Coronavirus, obviously a very serious thing we can't necessarily make a ton of light of, but I think with situations like this, it's always going to be sort of blown out of proportion, maybe is the wrong way of putting it by the media, but reported on in such a way that people don't necessarily look too deeply into the facts and allow themselves to get panicked about it. So I think that's something that we're kind of already seeing a little bit of. So I would probably say, as far as the season goes, I think the CBA, because it doesn't sound like they're overly close at the time. But to be fair, in that respect, it feels like they're way closer than I thought they were going to be like a half a year or a year ago.
I'm going to go with coronavirus because we don't know what it is. And I think that if a lockout comes close, I heard a statistic that was backed by multiple sources. It's like 56% of NFL contracts are like the league minimum. And they need a majority by one vote. They just need the majority to pass a CBA. And I think it's all fun and games until you're actually going to start taking people's pay. Like, people aren't going to get paychecks anymore. And guys that are, not making $200 million that might have driven their credit up a little bit, might have some bills and things and be expecting to make $1 million. I can very easily see them, just quietly voting yes to probably like the second vote of the CBA or something. So I'm going to say coronavirus because, again, there's a lot of rumors and maybe a lot of hyperbole, but also we don't know what the hell it is right now. So very scary stuff. If there's a lockout and coronavirus, just take me.
Wash your hands. Just do that, and you'll
shave your beard.
Okay. No, okay. Let's not get crazy.
You're supposed to shave your beard.
Okay. Well,
I've seen a lot of, if I have to shave my beard, just take me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of probably going to be at that point, but if it does come to that. But yeah, I mean, you never know. I mean, there are, plenty of soccer stadiums.
Everyone has their own take on the coronavirus too. It's like, oh, it's just old people, or it's like, oh, it's man-made, like it's biological warfare, or it's like so many different takes. I love.
It's bat-made.
Or snake-made, because snakes eat the bats. We don't know.
Yeah,
see, we just don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it is the elderly and the youth are at risk, which obviously is not a good thing. So be careful if you have anyone in your life that fits that bill. Wash your hands. Be very careful because it is something that is somewhat serious. So yeah, keep an eye out for it. And yeah, there have been plenty of empty soccer stadiums over in Europe right now because of it, because some of those countries are
March Madness. They might be asking the teams or they might be nixing crowds.
Yeah, exactly. Just so, yeah, I mean, a lot of preemptive mandatory quarantines already going on. So yeah, it could be a thing where something like that could potentially happen, but I don't necessarily see it with the NFL. I think even if a fucking zombie apocalypse would break out, they'd still find a way to try and fill stadiums. So we'll see what happens.
That gave me like an Oakland Raiders, like Zombieland vibe for a second. Kind of making too much light of it. But anyway, another one. Thoughts on Ravens acquiring Javon Hargrave. I think I've spoken on that one already. Love Javon Hargrave. Love what he can do as a pass rusher, as a run defender, as a penetrating style player. He's young. He'll probably cost a little bit. but I don't think he's going to be a guy who's going to break the bank exactly. So give him some stability on a 3-4 year deal with, $30 million guaranteed over the course. And I think that's realistic and a splash that the Ravens could make. And then suddenly kind of really solidifies the middle of your defense in a good way as someone who can play and get pressure on third down and helps you to draft a little bit more freely. So love Javon Hargrave as a free agent option.
Yeah, candidly, I haven't seen enough of him at this point. Just like I feel like he kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. But I think, I like the idea of all the things you were just talking about. So I'd be fine with it. And it feels like that would be maybe the route that you take if you're trying to go for if you're trying to hit a bunch of doubles in free agency as opposed to go for a home run with a guy like a Clowney or somebody like that. So yeah, I think from that perspective, I really like the idea of roster building that way. So I think, I would like that.
Yeah, it feels, I just have this feeling, I think there's a question in here somewhere, I'll find who it was, but they asked like for us to try to predict the next Earl Thomas signing, like if there would be an Earl Thomas like signing or something. And that came out of kind of nowhere really and turned free agency around. But like with that move and then the Marcus Peters move, and then extending him, it feels like DaCosta is trying to, really tee one off if we're going with the baseball references and smack one out of the park again. We just would love to see the Ravens get one or two more blue chip players that are at some positions that they don't really have one right now, maybe linebacker, maybe interior defensive line, wherever. And that would be awesome. Yeah,
for sure. I could definitely see DaCosta going for that home run as well. I think he kind of likes the idea of, making a splash here and there. So I could see it.
Yeah, and he has been known to rip a fellow GM or two off and get the better of him, as Kenny Young for Marcus Peters fleecing. Then Nico Cantaloupe. One thing we really need to improve on as a unit that we lacked last year. What were you really longing for the Ravens to have that they did not have last year?
That's a really good question. It's kind of tough when you're 14-2, but I would probably say a competent, competent's the wrong word, but like another dynamic presence at wide receiver. It feels like Boykin is maybe supposed to be that at some point, but he kind of wasn't there, obviously, as a rookie, which is fine because he was a third-round pick. And then Snead is a solid possession guy, but I don't think he's necessarily striking fear into the hearts of people in the way that Hollywood was. So I think, especially with the fact that Hollywood was really the only receiver that showed up for the playoff game, I think another dynamic presence at wide receiver is something that I think was a little pronounced to me at times throughout the regular season even, and then it really bucked its head in the playoffs. So I think that would kind of be it for me.
Yeah, when you go start playing defenses that can deal with talent on an offense, that would have helped a lot. And the Chiefs, if the Ravens would have ended up playing the Chiefs, they were able to deal with some really dynamic talent skill sets as well. So I think absolutely a receiver. Just kind of like the pass rush, I don't know, was not very promising. But then again, we've looked at it and talked about it a ton. It feels like Wink wants to make quarterbacks just throw the ball real fast and get the ball out real quick when the defense is healthy and at its best. So, that's what the blitzing does. When you kind of show and have guys jumping at the bit that they're going to come blitz pre-snap, it's daring the quarterback. It's showing them, hey, you got to get the ball to the hot read, and then throwing a little confusion behind it, and it just makes a very direct path to success, very defined, that is dependent on quarterbacks being smart, decisive, and accurate, as well as being able to depend on their receiver. So I think, it would be great to, everybody wants a good pass rusher. Everybody wants Ngakoue. Everybody wants Clowney. Everybody wants Judon back, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's just not ever going to be maybe the defense isn't built to have a 15 sack guy or an 80 pressure guy. Look at Zadarius Smith. The Packers defense is constructed that way with a very traditional 4-man rush, and he goes and lights the world on fire. PFF had him at like 101 pressures or something, and Judon had like half of that. But maybe it's by design. So I don't know. Maybe we shall see if they invest in a pass rusher or an interior defensive lineman of some sort. But moving on to some of the very last ones, what would it take to move up and draft Isaiah Simmons if he falls out of the top 5? Hardur Swami asked that. So falling out of the top 5, I guess it means like 7 to 9, move up that range.
Maybe, but like safeties can fall, dude. I mean, I don't know. Is he a safety?
I really can't answer that question. Like,
Could
I really
you
can't.
could you answer that question about Derwin? And
Exactly, but he's 30 pounds heavier than Derwin.
Sure. So, but I mean, my point, I guess, remains.
I heard someone talking about him. They put it in a really good way. They said, don't over confuse him. He can spy Lamar Jackson and he can cover Travis Kelce. He's a matchup player. That like put me at ease about him very much so.
So it's kind of similar to Derwin in a way.
Yes.
And
Definitely a very similar player, but then like maybe just a little more in the like I think he'll pass rush a little more than Derwin and not drop into like a single high as much.
Okay, so he is much more, or at least a little more of a hybrid. But yeah, man, guys can fall. I mean, it happens all the time in every draft. Doesn't matter the player. Derwin James was supposed to be this, lock to go between 5 and 10, falls all the way to 17, and Ravens fans, I don't know, I'm not one of them, but a lot of them freak out about the fact that they, passed on him and let him go to San Diego, now LA. So yeah, guys can definitely.
After they drafted Hayden Hurst, it was a crisis. Then after you look at the entire draft, you're like, okay, I see what they did here.
Yeah, it's almost like you're supposed to wait a little bit to see how a draft plays out. And now Derwin James is playing for a largely irrelevant team with a terrible ownership group, and the Ravens are coming off of a 14-2 season. So you never know.
You never know. But yeah, how much would it take to trade up for him? This year's first, at least probably this year's second or third, next year's first, and probably another second or third next year would sound like how much it takes. Because think about how much it took for the Bears to move up for Trubisky. Think about how much it takes. Like, it takes a lot to move into the top 10 from not the top 20. It takes a lot. And then you have to think about it. If you're drafting someone in the top 10, they're going to be one of the 5, 7, 10 highest paid players of their position. So that's another kind of ancillary thought to go along with that, but it would take a lot. I think the trade chart to move up to 9 is officially like two firsts, a second and a third, something like that. So split that value however you want over the next 2 years. But I don't know. I wouldn't if you could say I'll give you 28, 4 fourth-round picks and a second-round pick next year for Isaiah Simmons, I'll do that. I'll definitely do that. But I don't know if anyone would take that.
Yeah, I don't know if I love the idea of jumping up that far, because it feels like you're giving up a ton of draft assets, and I feel like DaCosta would say the same thing. He seemed like a freaking crack addict when he was talking about the fact that he didn't have a second-round pick last year. So talking about giving up that much ammo, I mean, that's might be a little bit too rich for his blood.
Exactly. He doesn't want to. He said he didn't want to ever have to wait that long between players, and then one of the few takeaways
in his first draft.
Exactly. And one of the key takeaways from kind of the things that he's said is that he said they have just short of 200 players on their board. That's a lot. And I don't know if he's lying, if that's a smokescreen for all we know, but if that's true, 200 players means that you want 8, 9, 10 draft picks by like the end of round 6, the end of round 5. And the Ravens kind of have that. So while we might not think there's room, maybe they truly see this as a deep draft. It appeared very shallow at first. It tends to appear shallow at first in general every year. And then once you actually kind of dig in, you're like, okay, all right, there's linebackers, there's this, there's that. But yeah, I think this one's a little deeper than I anticipated. And it's just weird. At positions of need for now. But, I mean, history tells us don't draft for need. Go draft Marlon Humphrey. Where would this franchise be without Marlon Humphrey right now if they didn't draft a cornerback in 2017 when they did? They would not be in a good spot.
Yep, I'm definitely with you.
So with that, we yield. There's a couple others that were like some ridiculous trade scenarios and things. But we're going to bow out on those as we've spent the latter portion of an hour, if not an hour, on that. But thank you very much for the mailbag, guys. Free agency comes in. We'll get some more hot takes from you guys and the draft, of course. We appreciate you guys chiming in every week, giving us some talking points, and we appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. And real quickly before we go, just wanted to hit on this. That it looks like the Ravens are going to be expected to use the franchise tag on pass rusher Matthew Judon. Yeah,
hopefully they keep him in their plans. I think you and I are both in the same boat that addition by subtraction is not the way. This is the way, to quote The Mandalorian. And I hope that he's in the long-term plans. I hope that they are doing this to not to tag and trade him, but to buy time to kind of float around the CBA and the CBA vote and then get an extension. Someone kind of schooled me on Twitter the other day talking about the 30% rule in CBA years, where I was kind of floating like the Ravens have the capability of signing a really big name free agent and putting a really small cap hit in 2020. Apparently you can't do that in a CBA year because there cannot be a 30% jump in cap hit from a CBA year to the first year of a new CBA. So that kind of disables that. So maybe they're kind of waiting and biding their time and seeing maybe who gets out in the market. But I would love to see them keep Judon. We've talked about this till we were blue in the face. I think all of our listeners know that already. If not, now you do. I think you're all on board with me, Jake. Yeah,
I definitely am. I guess it kind of feels weird that they haven't gotten anything done by this point for a long term, but if the franchise tag is what they have to do to facilitate setting up the long-term negotiations, I'm fine with that. It also opens up the possibility of a tag and trade, which, if he's not happy with their offers and they can't get anything done, then they're going to be able to trade him pretty much right up until the deadline. So I think ultimately that is going to be the right move to make. And whatever they do decide to do, I've pretty much decided that I just kind of trust Acosta at this point. I'm already kind of naturally a trusting fan / analyst when it comes to this organization, sometimes to my detriment, but I think last year, it proved me right in some ways. And I think I'm going to keep trusting this regime to continue to do the right thing. And if they think tagging Judon is the right thing in this situation, then I'm going to go ahead and roll with them on it.
Right. This is a situation of things that probably won't happen, but if they do, we'll pair together. If the Ravens, this is my hypothesis, if the Ravens franchise tag Judon, get maybe a second and a fifth for him, then they will trade up in the draft from 28 to much higher.
Are we doing a little if then?
Yeah, if then hypothesis. Classic science form.
I like that. Yeah, I could definitely see it. I mean, you could at least net like a high third round pick, probably a second round pick for him this offseason. So yeah, you could all of a sudden you have 2 second rounders and
four fourth rounders.
Yeah, a bunch of mid round picks, including 4 fourth rounders. You suddenly got some ammo to go up and get a stud at the top of the first round.
Exactly. Pick at number 12 all of a sudden, or trade with the Dallas Cowboys, have a couple holes they need to fill at 17, something like that, and then keep trading up, get 5 picks in the top 100, see if you can get some blue chip talent through the draft, and maybe it's 1 step back in the pass rush, but 2 steps forward in 2021, something like that. And hopefully, they're preparing for the present and the future. But I expect Mr. Judon, who I think he has like $2.3 million in career earnings, not a lot as a later round draft pick. 16 million, I think the official number is 15.8 at his position. And I think that would go a long way for him as someone who has not, had to deal with a franchise tag season. I think his bank account would be quite happy to know it's getting 16 million, as opposed to let's say Jadeveon Clowney, who did not want the franchise tag in Houston, got his number 1 pick, probably had 50 million in career earnings by the point it came to that, was already franchise tagged before. And then you go look over at Yannick Ngakoue, again, another guy who wants out of Jacksonville desperately, and then they franchise tag him. So to Judon, maybe he's looking around and all right, I don't think this is a grass is greener situation. I should, stay with this very competent franchise that is honest with its players for the most part, and get my 16 million. And, maybe they give him a 3-year deal after that, or make an extension that turns into 4 years and throw him a nice 50, 60, 70 million. I'd love to see it. He's durable, consistent for the most part, and we want him back in Baltimore.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe he's not thinking any of that. Maybe he's just thinking $15, $16 million is one metric fuck ton of Crunchwrap Supremes. So who knows? But ultimately, that is going to do it for tonight. We'll see what we have as far as another episode for this week. Maybe some news starts to pop up and we'll get one out for you guys on Friday or even Saturday. Who knows? But either way, we will certainly be back next week. If not, we really appreciate you guys listening and for shooting us all the great mailbag questions. It filled up a full hour-long episode for us for this fine Wednesday, which we very much appreciate. You got anything else before we get rolling here?
No, this is the Newman episode. This is just the mailbag episode.
All right, fair enough. I like that a lot.
The episode where Jerry's the mailman.
It makes me think of when he, at the very end, when he's like, "You're a disgrace to the uniform," and he rips the patch off, and then Jerry just looks at him. He's like, "This is your coat, right?"
Yeah.
Damn. But yeah,
he said over 80% of people got their mail. Wait, it's the most.
Nobody ever does their job that good. You're a disgrace to the uniform.
This is your jacket. Newman just looks up and his chin jiggles.
Damn. Oh man, that's how you know that we've come to the end of the road on this one.
Yeah.
But yeah, we really appreciate you guys listening. As always, go ahead and shoot the show a follow on Twitter. Almost to 800 followers. So I'd like to get, I think we're 2 away. So let's get it up to above 800 and then keep pushing for that elusive 1,000. Probably coming up on like half a year since I started that account. So still trying to get it rolling at a good pace. So follow it at Podcast Beatdown. You can follow me at Jake Luke. That's LOUQUE. You can follow Spencer at Ravens4Dummies. That's the number 4. Check out the Instagram. Go ahead and interact with that as much as possible. And keep an eye out for us posting our mailbags on there. We also are going to try to start posting them on Twitter a little bit more. At least I am, because that's kind of supposed to be my responsibility. So shout out to me for only now starting to do that. So yeah, like I said, interact with the Instagram as much as possible at Baltimore_beatdown. And also check us out on YouTube, trying to get a little more active on there. I've posted the last couple episodes. It's a trend I'm going to try and hope to continue. And yeah, hopefully maybe get some video content out for you guys that we've been discussing for draft season. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Check out the YouTube page. It's just Baltimore Beatdown. And yeah, other than that, have a great rest of your week, guys.
Yeah, have a good week. Have a better week than Matt Elam, who was just cut from the DC Defenders of the XFL.
I saw that, yeah. Rest in peace, Matt Elam. You dead bitch. Yeah, peace out.
See ya.
All right, thanks a lot. Appreciate you guys. See you later. All right, God bless.